Hi, I'm George Norrie, and welcome to our Coast to Coast AM YouTube channel. Have fun, tell your friends, and share us with everyone. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Coast to Coast AM's mobile app. And always remember to log on to our website at coasttocoastam.com for daily articles, the best paranormal information, and all you need to know about your favorite guests. And now you can become a Coast Insider directly through the Coast mobile app. We welcome our international listeners and even offer a free 2-week trial. So don't delay. Become an insider today. Nick Redfern back with us. His latest work, How Antigravity Built the Pyramids. Nick Redfern back on Coast to Coast AM. Nick has been interested in UFOs since 1978. His main area of research centers around determining what has been learned about the UFO subject at an official level in Britain. He has spent hundreds of hours at the Public Record Office in London, has uncovered thousands of pages of previously classified Royal Air Force, Air Ministry, and Ministry of Defense files on UFOs dating from the Second World War. Nick is the author of a number of best-selling books, including Men in Black, Personal Stories, and Eerie Adventures. His latest work is How Antigravity Built the Pyramids, the Mysterious Technology of Ancient Superstructures. Nick, always a pleasure. Welcome back.
Hey, George. Well, thanks for having me on again.
How have you been?
I've been good, yeah. I'm doing well and having a good time.
Super. Tell me your interest in the pyramids, Nick.
Well, it's something that goes back a long time because my grandfather was in the Second World War and he was actually stationed for a while at Egypt. And that's sort of what really got me interested in sort of ancient archaeology. And I sort of took that further and further and pursued the sort of connections to the UFO subject. And that's basically how it began, really, for me.
Nick, how do you think and why do you think the knowledge of UFOs and the knowledge of the pyramid structures just seems to have vanished?
Well, I mean, this is an important thing because, you know, we're looking at gigantic stones, huge buildings, and we have no real understanding of how the work was done, who did it, why it was done. And in other words, we know very little at all. All we know is that the situation basically is like we're looking at the pyramids today and we realize that we cannot do what they could do back then. And so I thought about, well, surely there's got to be a way to find the answers rather than just, you know, sort of black and white, oh, well, it's this or it's that, you know. And so what I've done with the book, which the title's How Antigravity Built the Pyramids, and the subtitle, The Mysterious Technology of Ancient Superstructures, that sort of gives you an idea. But the book, basically, George, is a look at how massive, huge blocks of rock and stone could have been created, and particularly even more incredible, how it could be moved for huge distances on the ground that would really simply not be possible thousands of years ago. So that means there has to be another way to have moved those stones, to put them into place hundreds of feet in the sky. And to sort of give you an idea of how this sort of works, it's known as acoustic levitation, and it's something that's really coming to the forward right now. And I'll just give you this quote from Marie Jones and Larry Flaxman, right, friends of mine, and they have looked into this as well, and the Jones-Flaxman team present the phenomenon as, quote, two opposing sound frequencies with interfering sound waves, thus creating a resonant zone that allows for the levitation to occur. Theoretically, to move a levitating object, simply change or alter the two sound waves and tweak accordingly. So that's the simple version of it. But basically, what we're talking about is using acoustics.
Acoustics.
Yes, let's get the word right. Acoustics, and if you look at a lot of the ancient stories coming from South America, Australia, even Europe, all over the place, you can find stories that relate to of strange sounds, sometimes a whistle, a rumbling, but all of these sounds could reportedly or reputedly allow these stones to be sort of elevated into the sky. And if you look into it, the whole issue of the way this works is that by using sound, you can manipulate rock, you can make stone of multi-tons, and I'm not exaggerating.
Nick, where do you think these large blocks of stones came from?
Well, again, that's an important question because if you look at a lot of the key places and issues in around the world, you've got South America, Central America, Native Americans. We've got a lot of data that allows us to understand that there are so many people back then who were extremely, intelligent, but we know very little about them. And really, if you think about it, it should be the other way around. In the 2022, we really should be looking at it from the perspective that it should be us who have been able to achieve this, rather than it being achieved 4 or 5 or 6,000 years ago. Everything is sort of like the wrong way around. But I think one of the most important things about this is that, as I said, the more you look into these stories, they do sort of really come together. I'll just sort of explain by that. I mean, if you look at, for example, at the whole issue, of the pyramids. I particularly, use the title of the pyramids, but I mean, there are massive structures all over the place. But the more that we look into it, the less and less we seem to having the answers apart from acoustic levitation, and to sort of see this sort of happen, if you like, for me, we're dealing with one of two things. One would be extraterrestrials, and another one, an intriguing one, would be an ancient human civilization that possibly went extinct, or possibly, some of this technology was deliberately hidden, but of course that then leads us down into another path. Well, why would the technology be held or hidden? Or if it wasn't hidden, well, what did happen to it, and why is it that we've lost the memories of this phenomenon since the times of the Egypts to basically to right now? We really don't know much in that period, the pyramids to now. It's very much sort of a grey area.
What's so baffling to me, Nick, too, is the fact that not only are these blocks of stones massive, but they moved them from a long distance, but they had to literally pull them out of the ground.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, there's one classic aspect of this, a place called Baalbek.
It's in Lebanon,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, Baalbek, an ancient city in the Bekaa Valley, going back to around about 9,000 BC. Now, this is sort of almost impossible to believe, except it is it is believable. What I'm going to say now is that in 2014, in that same area, a huge block of stone was found, and the weight was 1,650 tons. And there are several other stones of similar size and of similar weight. And I mean, you think about that, 1,650 tons, and that's just one block. Now, some people have said, well, maybe they just carved the stone and left it there. But if you look around the whole area, the people of that era were building structures all the time. So what would be the reason just to leave that block and not do anything with it? It's obvious to me that that's huge, gigantic stone, all of those huge, gigantic stones, I think, for me at least, it demonstrates that these stones would have been used to create a building. Now, to try and build something that weighs of the tons of like 1,650 tons, I mean, there's no way that we can do it ourselves today. And so for me, at least, the story of the Becker Valley and Baalbek is the perfect one for me that demonstrates that there's just no way that the human race right now can do what was done back then. And that ties in as well also with the Egyptians as well. The fact that we can find very similar ways of building, and also the buildings being huge in size, for me, that demonstrates that although maybe all these different cultures weren't all together, but they all knew something about pretty much the same thing, the way how to create these stones and allow them, if you like, to elevate into the sky.
Edward Leeds Skelton, a frail man from Latvia, lived in Homestead, Florida, built Coral Castle with some blocks of stone that were as big as the pyramid blocks. He did it all by himself. How in the world did he do it?
Well, yeah, this is a really interesting story. Ed, as he'd like to be named, Leeds Skelton, he was someone, a citizen of Latvia, a country on the Balkan Sea, and eventually gravitated over to the United States and settled in Florida. And what we have now is the famous Coral Castle. And what's particularly fascinating about Coral Castle is that it was built by Ed himself, and the massive stones that he managed to move and erect and put them on other stones, on another stone, and nobody really having the ability to see him doing this. So it's a really strange but fascinating story. Now, at one point, when he was at the height of his work and people were really sort of learning, wow, what's this guy doing? How is he doing it? At one point, he made this interesting quote: "I have discovered the secrets of the pyramids."
That's right.
"And have found out how the Egyptians and the ancient builders in Peru, Yucatan, and Asia, with only primitive tools, raised and set in place blocks of stone weighing many tons." So Ed clearly knew something and knew a great deal. And it's, for him at least, it all went back to the era of the pyramids. But he was sort of reluctant to go any further. And and he really did go to his death without having provided us, with the answers. But there's another part of the story as well. If you read the full story, it's very much like a love story as well. Ed and his wife, or as she was going to be his wife, that all fell apart, and it was actually turned into a song by Billy Idol called Sweet 16. He was fascinated by Ed's life and story, and his love life as well, and Billy got a hot song, And
well, they say that Nick, that Ed built that coral castle for his bride to be. That never happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these fascinating stories that almost kind of, you wouldn't think this could happen. It sounds like just a story, but it isn't. And Coral Castle, I mean, it still, has numerous people, going there all the time. And the good thing is you can still see those stones and appreciate the fact that, wow, how did this guy do it,
Acoustic levitation. Tell me about it, and what do you think it is?
Well, I'm very much in line with what Marie and excuse me, and we looked into at the start. For me, my view is that we are talking about acoustic levitation. It's kind of like the opposite with a magnet. If you've got two magnets and you push them together and they push away, well, you've got the space in between which allows you to pick something up. Now, acoustic levitation does work, but the problem that we have right now is the fact that all we can really pretty much lift and or elevate, however you want to put it, we can only really do it with something the size of like a coin, and that really isn't going to do you too much. If you want to build a building, or a pyramid. So what we're looking at is something that is starting to work. But I have to say and admit, right now, we are in the very small, early stages, and how long that will take, we don't really know. I mean, to give you an example, there's no doubt in my mind, at least, that we have found the proof, and the proof is in the sort of the ancient stories, and so I think from my perspective, we've got the answer. What we haven't got, though, is the science behind the answer.
Was it horns? Was it humming? What do you think it was?
Sorry, say that again.
Were they horns, humming? What do you think created the sound?
Well, I mean, it's not so much it needs the sound, but it's the issue of acoustics being able to sort of modulate small items in different directions, up and down. Now we cannot do that, apart from putting these little stones together. Like I said, like the size of your fingernail or something like that. But if you look back, for example, one classic example, Bruce Cathy, he was a ufologist back from the 1950s, and he came to believe that there was what he called like a worldwide grid, and he came to believe that this was the answer was pretty much on the same line. Let me just give you a quote that he made. He said, the huge Egyptian stones that were struck by a rod whereupon they would move through the air the distance of one bow shot. There is only one answer to the riddle of such construction methods, anti-gravity. So Kathy, as I said, a very well, very, very good pilot, and he was someone who realized that that going back thousands of years, there were rumors and legends of certain devices raising stones into the sky and pushing them almost like a small boat in the water and then just pushing it away. And if that was true, and I think it was, because these stories can be found all around the world, that makes me believe that what Kathy was talking about with his grid is what today we now call acoustic levitation.
There was a fellow by the name of Morris Jessup who was in the 1950s, was a ufologist. Tell us about that story.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a really weird story. In fact, it's a sinister story, I would say, as well. Morris Jessup was someone who, again, got into the UFO subject in the 1950s, and he began to get a deep interest in anti-gravity. And that was one of the issues himself that he had a real passion for, to the extent that in the mid-1950s, the U.S. Navy actually visited Jessup and wanted to know where he got this information from. And Jessup was someone who, who pretty much backed down, when he was speaking to the Navy. He was petrified. He was worried that, what's going to happen now? The Navy's coming to see me. But basically what happened was that they wanted to know where he got this data on acoustic levitation that the U.S. Navy was doing way back in the 50s. Now, Jessup, the further way ahead, the further he went ahead, what happened was that he got more and more intrigued by it and more excited until he was found dead in the front seat of his car. And this is a very weird part of the story, because the night before he was found dead in his car in a Florida park, he was in good spirits. He was actually due to go out with one of his friends the night after, and yet we find Jessup dead the next day. And there's actually a lot of weird little aspects that makes it to look like it was sort of not a real suicide, but a planned suicide, if you like, but not by Jessup, obviously, but by somebody else, suggesting, possibly even a murder. And that era, the 1950s, you could find a lot of data about acoustic levitation, anti-gravity, and then it kind of sort of went away a bit, and now it's starting to come back again now.
I was going to say, Nick, are we working on acoustic levitation now as a science?
Yes, we are, actually. I mean, a lot of people are doing a great deal of work on this subject, because it's mainly because of the potentials, and so there's multiple, in fact, you could say there's multiple companies now are looking at acoustic levitation. If you just Google it, you'll see, and you don't have to even, put the pyramids or anything like that in the story. You can find how today's scientists are looking into this. But again, the problem is we're not really able still, even now, to raise anything pretty much more, than anything like the top of your finger.
Nick, what do you think happened to the technology?
Well, that's one of the important things. Now, what we know is that, into sort of the 13th, 14th century, you can find a lot of stories of people who could levitate and could move stones. And you can find a lot of legends from the UK, not just in relation to Stonehenge, but also in relation to other parts of the UK where people were able to raise small stones and then bigger stones in different parts of the UK. But then suddenly it stopped. And that sort of phenomenon of stones all around the world sort of being raised here and there, it pretty much just came to a complete end. And again, that's something we don't really know. And I think there are two possibilities. One was lost, that somebody wanted this technology not to be found for us. Or the other one is that it was lost, which is a possibility as well. So I think those are the two possibilities. Now,
what about number 3, Nick, that it wasn't lost or someone wasn't holding it back, it simply flew away?
Well, I mean, that could be a possibility as well. But something happened that changed the situation from, with all the, like, for exact like Baalbek, and places like that, and the Egypts as well, and the Egyptians and the pyramids. I mean, I think if you look at it, we see back then the technology and the structures that were built were done far better than they were, or they are today, I should say. And for those reasons, I think we were dealing with one of two things: extraterrestrials or highly advanced humans who, for whatever reason, also possibly just vanished.
Nick, is there a tie-in with the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids of Giza?
Well, I mean, that's an intriguing issue because some people have suggested, that there's one date for the pyramids and what a greater date for the Sphinx. And if that is the case, and we could prove that, that would really sort of, it would turn history on its head, because it would push things not just back sort of like 10,000 years, but it would demonstrate and show that if it was done by humans, that it would show us how that the human civilization had gone back. On the other hand, if it was an extraterrestrial component to it, then that would be even more amazing, and it would also demonstrate that we have no real understanding of who put the Sphinx together, and that in itself is fantastic as well.
The whole thing's an amazing story, Nick, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the more you look into all these stories, the more you get to sort of see these sort of parts coming together and realizing that history doesn't seem to be what it really is. I mean, to give you an example, we just sort of talk about Stonehenge for a couple of minutes. That's probably the most sort of famous standing stone or circle of stones in the UK.
Right.
And now it's nowhere near the size, of the pyramids. However, there's something really intriguing about Stonehenge, which ties in with the whole issue of acoustic levitation. And as I said, Stonehenge, not that high, And you might think, well, it wouldn't take too long to put that together. But what a lot of people don't know is that Stonehenge is in the county in England of Wiltshire. And a lot of the stones had to be taken from a place called the Preseli Mountains in Wales. And the stone that was brought to Wales, the stones that had to be brought to Wiltshire to be put in place, the distance was 240 miles. And whoever put together Stonehenge had to move those stones from Wales to Wiltshire, 240 miles, and some of those stones were weighed 25 tons. So, we're looking at a situation. You imagine that. You've got multiple 25-ton weight stones being pushed across mountains, not across roads or anything like that. No, nothing like that at all. And you're going through mountains, possibly even snow and rocks, for 240 miles. And again, things like that, it's just not feasible. And again, there are rumours of the stones becoming light and again, levitating. So again, for me, if you look around all the world, pretty much, you can find variations of these stories, and a lot of them, or most of them, relate to this issue of stones becoming light, being able to move them along. Mm-hmm. But then suddenly, like I said, it all just goes away. And that's one of the most baffling things about it. It's here 1 minute, and it literally was there almost the next time.
I want to thank you again for being on the program. You're always invited back, my friend.
All right. Thanks, George.
Nick Redfern, his book is How Antigravity Built the Pyramids. Great. The Coast mobile app is now available for download on iPhones and Android devices. You can become an insider directly through this app. This is a great option for our international listeners, and new users will also receive a free 2-week trial.